Welcome back again to Rinka's Kitchen. I have another family favorite recipe. It is called CSERESZNYÉS TORTA cherry cake. So what you will need for this recipe is 3 cups of fresh cherries. So I was able to go to the market and get some fresh cherries from the market, and so I got approximately 3 cups of cherries, 2 1/4 cups of pre-sifted flour, 2 teaspoons of baking powder, 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 1/4 cups of sugar, 1 tablespoon of pure vanilla extract, 1/2 cup of butter, 4 egg yolks, 4 egg whites, and 5 tablespoons of milk. And for the topping at the end, you'll need 1 tablespoon of powdered icing sugar. So before preparing this recipe, you have to wash and remove the pits. So I have a sort of like a cherry pit remover that I purchased at a store, and I just use that to remove the pits from the cherries. And then of course I cut them in half, so as you can see I've done that. So you want to be cutting the cherries in half. So these are fresh cherries. Then using a wooden spoon, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix together the sugar. So this is our 1 1/4 cup of sugar, and salt, 1 teaspoon of salt, and I've got my 2 teaspoons of baking powder. So I'm just going to mix the dry ingredients together. Now this was a family favorite recipe of my grandmother's and mother. Whenever there was cherry season in her region of Hungary, they actually had a cherry tree in their backyard, and they would pick cherries from their cherry tree. And they would prepare this simple, quick and easy recipe. So it's kind of like a white cake with it's mixed together like into the batter. Now you could put the cherries on top if you wanted to, on top of the batter, but today we're going to fold them into the batter. So that's mixed together, and then I'm going to just make a little bit of a well in the middle of the flour. And I'm going to add my butter. Now I've got my 1/2 cup of butter, but I put it at room temperature. So it's just easier to mix and work with. So I've done that ahead of time. And then of course I've got the vanilla extract and the 4 egg yolks. Into the cake batter. And then the 5 tablespoons of milk. And then you fold in your egg whites. And then lastly you put in your cherries into there. So you keep stirring this around until it gets moist. becomes a bit moister when you put in the egg whites. It seems to be a bit dry at first, but once you start adding the eggs and the milk in it, of course then you put your cherries in there, you fold your cherries in there. And I've cut them into, you can put the cherries on top if you want. We're just going to fold them in there into the dough. And then you put it into a greased, floured pan. Like so. Just going to give an extra spoon here. Smooth it out. And it's a very quick and easy recipe to make. So it's not so much a, it's kind of a thick batter. So it's a bit of a heavier cake. It's almost like a fruit cake. And you can put the cherries on the top, but my grandmother would mix it into, it's like a fruit cake. Eh? And I've got the oven preheated to 350 degrees Fahrenheit, and you bake it at about 45 to 50 minutes, and you test it with a toothpick to make just a check in the center and make sure that it's it should rise a little bit more. I've used this pan, this size of the pan, round pan. It's a great recipe. And then of course you take a tablespoon of the powdered sugar and you put it on, sprinkle it on the top. You want to serve it and for presentation, you want to put it on a cake pedestal. I have a cake pedestal that I have. And you can dust sprinkle the powdered sugar on it just before you serve it to your guests, and served with your favorite coffee or tea. Okay, and so I'm going to put this into the oven, and that's what it looks like. So it's going to, this is going to go into the oven for about 45 to 50 minutes, and it's a preheated oven. And we'll put the timer on, about 50 minutes, and that should ring in about 50 minutes. I'd probably check it around maybe 45 minutes with a toothpick and see if it's ready to take out of the oven. And then you'd want to cool it down before you remove it from the pan. And I've got the spring form pan, so it's got a little lock on it, so you just unlock the lock and then you can lift up the ring around the cake pan and then remove it carefully from the bottom of the cake pan. Onto your serving, it could be a serving plate or it could be a cake pedestal. What I usually do is I just take a plate, simple, like a sort of like a plate, and then I put the cake on top of that, and then I put it on top of my cake pedestal. So I don't put it directly on the cake pedestal. You could, because the one that I have is kind of like that type of material that is sort of like that's sort of made it like sort of like porcelain dish, but I just usually put it on top of another plate. That way, so that you can just take it down off the cake pedestal and store away any of your leftover cake into sort of like a freezer type container. You can actually freeze this cake, And you can, you know, if you've got some guests coming in and guests, you know, coming over for coffee or tea, you can actually take that out of your freezer container and thaw it out, and you can warm it up. You can actually warm it up in the microwave or whatever. So, but usually there isn't anything left over from this cake. It's pretty much everybody likes to have 1 or 2 slices of it. So I'll be back to show you what this great recipe looks like. Welcome back again to Arinka's Kitchen. My cherry cake, the CSERESZNYÉS Torta, is ready, and I've taken it out of the oven and I've placed it on a cake pedestal, a plate and then a cake pedestal, and this is what the cherry cake looks like. It's almost like a sort of a cherry torte cake, and as you can see, I've sort of mixed the cherries into the batter. Okay, and that's basically what this cherry cake looks like. And so what I'm going to do now, before you serve it to your guests, what I've got here is a tablespoon of powdered sugar. So I'm just going to sprinkle that lightly onto the top like that before serving it. And my husband and I are going to be cutting a piece of this for ourselves, and I'm going to be making this same cake for my mom next week when I go visit them. Fresh batch of cherry cake. And so I'm just going to sprinkle that on the top, as much as you like so. So that's what the cherry torte looks like. Now, there's going to be further photographs of this on the website, and you'll be able to see when it's sliced up what it looks like on a plate. So, and of course you can serve it with your favorite tea or coffee. Some of it can be frozen if you have any left over for a week or 2, and then it can be warmed up in the microwave. So if you have any left over, you can do that. But usually when you have 4 or 5 people over, it goes pretty quickly. It's very, very tasty. So if you have any questions or comments regarding this recipe, you can email me at irene@arinkaskitchen.com. or my website is arinkaskitchen.com. So until next time, bon appetit, jo eet vadet.